Okay, so before anything else, I just want to say I am well aware of certain spoilers. I'm not even really sure if we should call them that anymore, since Toei decided to put them on full display because gotta sell that merch, am I right? That said, I won't be discussing it just yet because frankly, there's a lot of other videos I'd rather work on right now than making a whole separate video for that. And I also prefer discussing this stuff when it's most relevant to the show itself. If you guys want to discuss it in the comments, then honestly, be my guest. I just ask you please be respectful of those who have somehow avoided spoilers by living under a rock. Okay? Okay. Also, to those rock residents, how you doing, neighbor? We opened this week with the Tropical Club taking even more influence from the Rider Club. Well, okay, actually, they had volunteered to cheer for their home team at the next softball game. And as usual, Minori wasn't actively participating, but rather contributing behind the scenes, designing a template for their cheer banners. However, it ended up getting caught in the aquapod and oh geez. Well, enjoy seeing that in your nightmares tonight, folks. Laura tried to save her, and the two ended up getting sucked into the pot together, and this somehow resulted in them switching bodies. So yes, we're getting the classic Freaky Friday scenario, or as you kids nowadays know it, the Your Name scenario. No offense, I actually really like that film, and in fact, here's my favorite scene from it. On record, this is the third case of this scenario in this particular franchise, and as some of my commenters have pointed out, both of the previous ones have kind of missed the mark. I mean, personally, I still really like these episodes, especially the awesome hilarity that was Cure Candy, but in both cases, they did commit a grave sin when it comes to these scenarios in animation. They had the characters switch VAs too. For me, this just doesn't work for two main reasons. One, a person's voice is not attached to their soul, it's a part of their physical body and vocal cords. And two, and more importantly, you're denying the VAs the ability to really stretch their acting chops and give us new versions of their character rather than just the same character in a different skin. This was used to great effect in stuff like Kokoro Connect and Naruko-san, which I thought had one of the best and most hilarious examples of this. Yet, for whatever reason, Toei Animation has failed to recognize this even outside of Precure. In both versions of DBZ, the original and Kai, they had Captain Ginyu's VAs play Goku and vice versa during the body swap episodes, which just doesn't make sense to me as Masako Nozawa already had a perfectly good evil Goku voice, so thankfully they kind of corrected this much later on with Goku Black. So, with all that in mind, what did they do here?
He chose poorly.
Yeah, I'll save more of my complaints for later. Also, I guess in order to distinguish that they had switched bodies, they had Minori in Laura's body put on her glasses, even though again, that's a physical, not spiritual trait. Do I need to break out this game in order to explain eyes to y'all? This did at least stick out to the rest of the Precure who are wondering why she wasn't wearing her glasses, which was on top of the fact that she was acting like she had taken some assertive lessons from Plankton. Specifically, it bothered Asuka, and not so much Minato and Sango, who wouldn't play much into this episode at all. In fact, this episode would mostly just focus on these two and them getting used to their new bodies. In Minori's case, she had trouble piloting the aquapod, while Laura was able to rather quickly catch on to how to use two legs, in spite of all of her walking up until now either being a delicate balancing act or her just hopping around. In fact, they did get some of the best animation of this episode, better than some of the fight animation later, to her pulling off some impressive gymnastics. This was then followed up by her replenishing her strength with some empty calories. Later, Laura would have to explain why Minori's blood sugar levels were through the roof. Honestly, as funny and as cute as some of this is, it does raise some issues with me, which I'll bring up later. Fortunately, some more interesting stuff was happening with Minori, who found herself drifting into the ocean. This gave her the opportunity to really explore her watery setting. You're pointing that out and not the fact that your glasses are able to stay on. But yeah, after doing a little dance routine, she was able to experience the true beauty of the ocean in not at all a bad sequence. Back with Laura, she had finished designing their banner. I approve. It looks like the font that Precure uses for their anime, which is appropriate considering what some of their influences are. However, when it seemed like Minori was going to get all of the credit for her work, she decided to reveal the truth alongside the bespeckled mermaid. This resulted in Laura outright admitting that she had never heard of something like this happening, and conveniently she would never really have to explain, but again, more on that later. For now, the two went home for the day, and we did get a cute scene where Laura read Minori's very flowery diary that would make Tsubomi jealous. Of course, they didn't have to deal with keeping this a secret from her family, like her mother. Also, did you invite a friend over? Because that was clearly not your voice. See what I mean? Later, we got another pretty good scene where the two were able to reflect on what it was like walking and swimming in the other's feet and fins respectively. Of course, Minori wanted her legs back, but did have to admit the experience did open up her horizons a little bit. The next day, Laura did her best impersonation of the narrow strut. Not exactly sure why they couldn't have had her walking like this from the start to show her unfamiliarity with walking.
The answer is don't think about it.
For now, I guess it was time for the Monster of the Week or something. Hey look, it's me every Sunday morning. Oh god, I've got a lot of editing to do. To his credit, Chungi did seem to acknowledge how half-heartedly put together this all was, with him even randomly picking a croissant as his Monster of the Week. That line almost felt too real. The non-body swap cures jumped into action, in particular Sango, who I guess still wanted some action after kind of getting shortchanged last week, and got rolled up for her troubles and taken out of action for pretty much the remainder of the fight. Seeing their friends in trouble, Laura tried to transform, but it failed, which makes sense in this case, as much like the Smile Pact, the tropical variant was likely tied to the soul of the proper user. So, okay, maybe these two will need to get creative, and maybe even take a page out of Smile and... Yeah, after so many contrivances so far, we may as well wrap things up with Deus Ex Machina, am I right? With that, Minori put her glasses back on, and just as quickly took them off again during her transformation, which I'll admit did get an unintentional laugh out of me. From there, she did come up with a decent strategy to rescue Sango, and finally we got to see her eye beams after so many episodes, before they wrapped things up with the big chicken. Afterwards, the two reflected on their experiences and how it affected them.
Oh, I am serious. Look, this is my serious face.
I mean, to be fair, it did have an effect on Minori, who, as I said, did gain an appreciation for going outside of her box, as she did at least play a small part in cheering the softball team on, so I guess we could call these some good baby steps. Though the episode also ended on Laura looking closely at her toeless appendages. So, if I were to rank the body swap episodes in this franchise so far from best to worst, I think I would have to go Smile, Fresh, and then this, so yeah. I mean, not to say this is an outright bad episode or anything, it had its moments, but I also don't think it took full advantage of this classic scenario. It's pretty obvious they're building towards a certain other development coming up pretty soon, but even then, I think they could have done a lot more here. While I don't want to have to blame it all on the writer, I do have to point out this was another Konomi Shugo scripted episode, and once again, she is showing her inexperience not just writing for Precure, but writing in general, as this was not a very well thought out body swap episode. I mean, put aside my issues with the voice thing, an episode like this is ripe with comedic possibilities, mostly involving the shenanigans resulting from people reacting to the victims acting differently than normal. in the case of Smile, we got to see a full day of a fairy mascot trying to take classes and failing miserably. While in Fresh, they even tried to hide the fact that Inori was a ferret, leading to all kinds of great visual humor. Here though, other than Asuka, no one really caught on to Minori acting differently than normal, and instead we mostly just focused on these two getting used to their new bodies, but again, even that was directed underwhelmingly, with Laura just knowing how to walk on two legs, and while Minori struggling with piloting the aquapod was cute and funny, her usual flat reactions didn't really punctuate the scenes all that well. And yeah, there was just a lot of contrivance here that made me want to use that one Rick and Morty clip more than once. Sometimes I can let this stuff slide with suspension of disbelief, but when it piles up like this and involves important plot points like how they even swap bodies and then switch back, it just takes me out of the show. Most importantly, this episode just didn't feel all that necessary at all. Going back to the previous Precure examples, the Fresh episode was very plot significant as it resulted in Inori getting over her fear of ferrets and even befriending Tart. The Smile episode saw Miyuki and Candy getting closer and even seemed to foreshadow the fairy's future importance in the show. This episode did at least give a little development to Minori and did hint at future developments for Laura like her longing for legs. Though even that's been subtly hinted at in previous episodes, so it just felt kind of needless here. Now again, I won't say this was a bad episode, as we did get that development, and even a few cute moments here and there, mostly involving Minori getting used to Laura's body. But at the same time, with hardly any interactions with the rest of their team robbing us of the usual good character writing I praised, this was just a very forgettable episode. If you want a good body swap episode, go watch those other Precure episodes I brought up, or even Nyarko-san for that amazing voice acting. I'm not exactly sure when this is gonna go up, as I gotta head out to negotiate with the movers, but I do hope that you guys can still enjoy this video, even if it's not a premiere. Regardless, you'll be happy to know that amongst all this chaos, I've been able to get a good chunk of my Gold Princess Part 3 script done, and as soon as I get my new place set up, video productivity should improve significantly, as I'll be much closer to my usual workplace. So look forward to it. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and yeah, I better change my clothes before I head out. Now let's see, under which rock did I put my good shirts?